You say to save the climate, you need us ducks in line. But you can't change the weather, and you can't change my mind. For I don't need no ruler, and I don't need to vote. 'Cause I've got fuck you money, and that's the antidote.
Nice to have you here in Satoshi's coffee shop.
Nice to be here.
My first question is, where were you born?
I was born in Sweden, close to, if you know, the biggest lake in Sweden is called Lake Vänern, and I was born on the south side of that. So 13 miles from Gothenburg.
I read a tweet from you about the school indoctrination. And I wanted to ask you, how was it when you grow up? Did you have experience with school indoctrination on your school?
Yes, of course. Like I grew up in Sweden in the 80s. So back then we had 3 state-run radio channels and 2 state-run TV channels, and that was it. And I believe the school curricula was very close to the DDR's school curricula.
Oh, really?
There's just a couple of things that they changed.
Okay.
So and we grew up during the last phases of the Cold War, and they told us that like there's 2 superpowers in the world, and it's the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and it's 2 different systems. They're sort of different, but sort of equal in human values and you know. How powerful they are, and like how a government should be run. So people back then viewed like the East Bloc as something normal, more than just a giant prison. But as far as school goes, I remember, you know, thinking that the natural sciences and math in particular made a lot of sense to me. And I liked it because I didn't have to study and you know, regurgitate something that was in a book. I could just understand it, and then I could go and take the test, and it worked. But the social sciences were never like that. It's just different. And it's not until I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and then later on the praxeology rabbit hole, and started studying libertarian thought and stuff not until I found praxeology that social sciences made sense, because it's the only social science that made sense. Mm-hmm. And you quite quickly figure out that all the other social sciences are just opinion pieces. Mm-hmm. So, but when we grew up, we were hammered with the at school. They really tried to push the narrative that of everyone's equal value. Mm-hmm. So every person on Earth's equal value, and no one ever questioned that, or questioned like how anything could be of equal value. Like there's no such thing as something that's of equal value to anything else, because value is subjective. It's different from person to person what you value or not. But that was like a mantra during the times I grew up.
So you never heard about Austrian economics in school?
No, of course not. The school wouldn't exist if they knew about Austrian economics, I guess.
So Ludwig von Mises or something like that was not a name in.
No, and I was sort of curious about that before Bitcoin, but I hadn't done the homework until after I found Bitcoin and started really falling down that rabbit hole as well.
And when was it? How old?
When I found Bitcoin. How old I was? I was 4. No, that's a lie. I found it, I think 2014, 2015, something. I don't really remember the first phases of it, but I took an online course in 2016 and then started writing about it in 2017.
So this was your first step into Bitcoin? The course? Not any news or some stuff from the internet?
Yeah, some stuff from the internet and news and such were like the first, but that's what drove me to apply for the course and do that.
Who made the course? From whom was it made?
This was it's called a MOOC, a multi-online whatever, from the University of Nicosia. and it was about digital currencies in plural.
Okay.
And Andreas Antonopoulos was one of the teachers. And
yeah,
I guess like
cool.
almost all of the Bitcoiners from my generation were orange pilled by Andreas Antonopoulos. This is before he started dabbling in shitcoins, and so sort of everyone was orange pilled by him.
And how long did it took to be ready to write a book about it, about Bitcoin?
Oh, that's a good. Like when I finished the course, I finished it with flying colors, and for that you got a like 15% discount for taking the whole master's program. But the whole master's program was pretty expensive, regardless of the 15% discount. So I thought to myself, like, I'm really interested in this stuff, and I'd really like to know more. But I have a choice here. Do I spend a ton of money in doing the master's program, or do I just buy some Bitcoin and see if I can do anything else with it? So at the time I was working on a small crew transfer vessel, because my university degree is I'm a master mariner. so I'm a sea captain by trade. That was in my Fiat life. Like I was in shipping, doing different things in shipping, and at the time, this is around then 2016, I was working at a wind farm, at a crew transfer vessel in a wind farm in southern Denmark, in Rødbyhavn, which is the opposite side of Puttgarden, sea-wise. And there was a small wind farm outside that little village, and we had wing inspectors on board, which meant that 12 Brits that climbed up the wind turbine up to the nozzle and hung down by rope next to the wing to inspect the wing, and that of course took the whole day. So me and my deckhand took the boat to the next turbine and moored by the next turbine and just spent the entire day there, which and I did all the paperwork and checked the engine and stuff in 30 minutes, and then I was sitting in my captain's chair like, what do I do now? And the internet connection wasn't very good, so I figured, and I was bored with all the telephone games and everything, so like I had 10 hours to kill, so I started writing articles about Bitcoin, and then they started taking off, and yeah, the rest is history.
And was it the first book you wrote, was it about Bitcoin, or have you
I wrote
something else before?
I wrote articles at first, and then just to see what the process of publishing a book was like, I compiled the articles into a book and self-published it online just to try the process. But then I realized the only thing I had attached to my name on the internet was a book that I wasn't very proud of, because like it wasn't edited, it wasn't very good. It was like baby steps in terms of writing. So I promised myself to write a proper book about Bitcoin, and this was in New Year's Eve between 18 and 19. So I started writing a page a day, and the New Year's resolution I had was to write a page a day for the entirety of 2019. And of course, like with every New Year's resolution, you break them after a while, and I broke mine after 106 days when I figured that I was done writing that book. So that became Sovereignty Through Mathematics, which is my first book about Bitcoin. And later that year, I brought it to Riga, to the Baltic Honey Badger conference, and I gave away 25 books to important Bitcoiners and sold the rest. And then that book started to take off, and that's like the beginning of my Bitcoin career.
In the first book, you wrote one example about a guy who makes only good advice when he has a own store to get a good revenue from the people. Can you tell us a little bit more about the example?
I don't know what example you.
In the book, it's about the free market, and there is an incentive for the people to give a good advice to a customer, instead of saying no, there is no other store.
Yeah. This is in the
do you
second book,
remember?
I think.
Was it the
Yeah,
second book?
And, yeah, and Independence Reimagined, and it's about like if you have a brick and mortar store and there's a competing store next door, the shop owners, if there's a customer comes in and and asks the shop owner for if there's another store nearby, you would intuitively think that the shop owner is incentivized to lie and just say that no, there's no other shop here. You have to buy stuff from me, but that's not really true because that destroys the shop owner's reputation, and reputation is worth a lot in a functioning free market that's not diluted by fake money.
Yeah. I think it's a very, very good example for a good a working free market.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of counterintuitive things about a functioning free market. There's something called Ricardo's law. So if that I find very interesting, though it's counterintuitive. So say you and I we're manufacturing two different types of goods. So say pens and glasses. And if you're better than me at producing one of the goods, and I'm better at you than producing the other good, we're both better off if we produce what we're best at and then trade with one another. Yes. Yeah, but the funny part is what Ricardo's law describes, and that is if I'm better at you than producing both goods, and you're crappier than me at producing both goods, then I'm still better off and you're still better off if I do what I do best and leave the rest to you. Mm-hmm. So like I produce these advanced pens and I don't really like making glasses, so you make the glasses and we trade, and that's also better for both of us. So, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that in when you start falling down that rabbit hole and study
Very
market.
interesting.
Yeah.
Would you say we have a free market?
No.
Anywhere in the world?
In Bitcoin we do.
In Bitcoin. In the Bitcoin world.
But Bitcoin is also very, like, until we reach some level of hyper Bitcoinization, we're still there's still a lot of fiat-y things coming in and out of Bitcoin, of course, because we all have to at this point function in the societies as they are today.
How would a city look like in a hyper Bitcoinization world?
I think there's a lot of. First of all, I think it's impossible to imagine what a world like that looks like. But because to me, like a Bitcoin-denominated world is one divided by current world. so where every decision is quality over quantity, and it looks very different. And the biggest takeaway I have, I mean, like when I'm in this room, I know I'm in the room with friends because you're all Bitcoiners and. You all,
I think so.
We sort of, yeah, I hope so. But the thing I noticed over the years when hanging with other Bitcoiners is that all Bitcoiners are very friendly to one another. And I think this is for, the main reason that is the case is that we all want Bitcoin to succeed. And then by proxy, we all want other Bitcoiners to succeed. Because what makes Bitcoin succeed? Well, that Bitcoiners succeed, and vice versa. So we're incentivized to be good to one another. But we also know that our Bitcoin is the deeper your knowledge is, the more you know that this is the most valuable thing I'll ever own. So you don't want to spend that. So you choose to spend everything else you have before you spend your Bitcoin. You rather spend your fiat, and you rather even spend your reputational capital, or like being nice to a person or doing favors and stuff. So I think in what this means in the long run, and if you combine that with like the lower time preference that comes with having a deflationary money, like fiat money makes you want to spend at all times, yes, because otherwise the money loses value and you don't get as much for it. Bitcoin over time rises in value, so you're incentivized to not spend it unless it's really, really, really important. So you get to this closer to this philosophical insight that which you could do without, you own, which is like the flip side of the things you own end up owning you. So and I think Bitcoiners are much more like Stoic or Buddhist in that sense. We don't really crave the golden Lambos. That's for the shitcoiners. Like, we don't want Lambos. We want to know that we will never need a Lambo. Like that's more important. At least the vectors are pointing. You look like you want the Lambo, but okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say, let's say we have 1 or 2 shitcoiners here. What would you
no,
tell
I'm not
them?
calling you a shitcoin. It's not that.
Not him.
Yeah.
No. But what would you tell him? What's your elevator pitch for a shitcoiner?
Yeah, but let me just answer this question first, because what I think that leads to, if you really think about what a future with people that are like that looks like, because this incentive to help one another is not going away because we hyper Bitcoinize. Like it's rather that it reinforces. So we're all incentivized to be better to one another, and we're all incentivized to use money less often. So I see the necessity for monetary transactions in a hyper Bitcoinized world is going down rather than up. So while the Lightning Network is neat and microtransactions is funny, and it's nice that they're possible, and it's a very cool invention, but I think they won't be as necessary in post-hyper Bitcoinization, because we'll just be nicer to one another and just give each other stuff.
Maybe it could be in a hyper Bitcoinization world that we use money only just for good gesture.
Yeah, or I think rather that we use, like, on-chain transactions are bound to be more and more expensive over time. So we'll use that for really big and important things. So like when we buy a house or a car or something. And we'll use Lightning for smaller transactions. But I think it's more likely that when Bitcoiners go to a restaurant, a single person will pick up the bill rather than we'll all split the bill and do that. I mean, I think the necessity for transactions goes down and not up. Also because of number go up, because like if everyone's richer, everyone can afford to be friendlier to one another. So I have a very positive view of the future, and I think it's not as bleak as people think it might be, because like we have social media, we have video conferencing, and we have Bitcoin. So when I talk to someone on the other side of the world, like the first thought I have is like, why is it that a different rule set is true for this person than for me? Like this border thing, it's just bullshit. Like it's all just unnecessary. But now we have a system, rules without rulers, that can make us, interact voluntarily with one another. And on top of that, it reduces the profitability of violence and coercion, because you can put a gun against any person in the world's head and say, give me all your Bitcoin. And that person can give you some Bitcoin. But you can never know if you got all the Bitcoin or not. He might have given you like a 0.1% of your Bitcoin, of his Bitcoin or her Bitcoin. And there's no way for the attacker to know. And this fact like removes the Schelling point of violence. And it's all because this thing, Bitcoin isn't a currency, and Bitcoin isn't an asset. It's not digital gold. It's none of this. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's information. And money doesn't need to be anything but information. And sure, we use computers to do the proof of work, which is basically just guessing a number, because computers are faster than we are at guessing numbers, way faster. But a computer is nothing but a fancy abacus. So it's just an extension of our brain. It's nothing else. And if you think about that even more, like what is owning a Bitcoin? You can't really own a Bitcoin. You can possess a Bitcoin maybe, but if you go even deeper than that, because there's a difference between possession and ownership. If I give you my hat, you're in possession of the hat. I still own the hat. Mm-hmm. So I can. I'll say, can I have my hat back, please? I own my hat. And you can choose to say, no, fuck you, I have the hat. I'm not giving it back. Because you possess the hat. And this is what has happened between countries and their gold reserves over the centuries, many times. Like, hello, London, this is Uganda. We'd like our gold back, please. No, you can't have it, sorry. Like, but that's not possible in the same sense in a hyper Bitcoinized world. But anyway, where was I going with this? The abacus and the computer and stuff. So so you can't own a Bitcoin really, because to own it you need to possess it. But it's not really possessing a Bitcoin. It's just knowing a secret. There's no difference between knowing your private key and having access to your Bitcoin. And what is knowing a private key? Like, imagine if every Bitcoin owner remembered their seed phrase and then destroyed it. Then all the Bitcoins would exist in the heads of all the Bitcoiners. So there would be no line between the Bitcoin and the people who held it. So you are your Bitcoin in that sense. And even now, like, if you know the location to your seed phrase and it's very well hidden, it's hard for another person to find it, or your private key. That means, like, you have that information. Whoever has that information is the Bitcoin, because the Bitcoin really does exist in your head. It's just remembering a secret. Where is the private key, or what is the seed phrase? So every Bitcoiner is Bitcoin. It's nothing else. It's just an agreement on a fixed set of rules, which we can use to interact voluntarily with one another and bypass third parties. And that's all it is, a mathematical experiment that allows us to do this. And that makes you think even more, like, but what the hell if it's not a tangible thing at all? So it's just an extension of our brains. We use computers, an extension of our brains, to help us figure out a way to interact with one another, and that's all it is. But that means we had this ability all along. Like, we could just have been friendly to one another instead of going to wars and stuff, and killing our neighbors. We could have been friendly to our neighbors instead. So you realize that all the Bitcoin did was unlock something that was already in you. And I find that insanely powerful. It's like the great unlocker of human potential. Thank you.
I have a philosophical question for you about the shop owner who gives the good advice.
Yeah.
Do you think it's only because of the incentive, or is it because the person in a really free market is in the core a good person, or is it? What do you think? How he would decide?
I mean,
if
the person can
this incentive.
He can still choose to be an asshole and not give the advice. I mean, it's not up. Like, you can never truly know another person's motives. You can take a guess of what the other person's motives are, but financial motives are not the only motives we have. We have a lot of things that, like, if I decide to do this now and pick up this pen, that meant that somehow in my value hierarchy in my brain, at that specific moment, that was the thing I prioritized most. And that's all we can say about that action. And the same is true for the shop owner. So incentives can show us, like, that if all other factors remain unchanged, if you add an incentive for a certain behavior, then probably more people will do that thing rather than another thing. So you have to abstract out all the noise when you think about these things. But I do believe that in a free market, and the sounder the money, the freer the market. Like, if there's no manipulation of money, there's less misallocation of resources, which means that price signals function better, and that the market is more well-oiled in general. Like what we're living in now, where there's different tax rates in every country and for different goods, and there's inflation everywhere in different currencies. That means the current market is a dog on three legs, like trying to, while a sound money, like Bitcoinized global free market, that would be a greyhound. Like, so we're living in something very handicapped at the moment. But I believe that shop owner I talk about in the book would be incentivized to be very friendly to everyone else if he was living in that, slightly utopian. I'm a hopium salesman, as you might figure out. That scenario I was talking about before, like where everyone is friendlier to one another and we're not incentivized to be violent. Then of course there's a higher chance that the shop owner will give you the correct information and not fuck you over.
Mm-hmm. How changed Bitcoin you as a person?
Well, I became an author. Never tried that before. It changed me in a lot of ways. Especially it gave me confidence about the future and confidence in myself, I guess. And you dare to do more things and you dare to be yourself to a larger extent, I guess. And it makes you focus on sounder things and focus less on short-term temporary things. So I think it changes you in a lot of ways. I think the killer app of Bitcoin is how it changes people.
Yes.
That's the most important thing.
So maybe that's the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. All of that like ties into the answer to the when I went away on the little talk there about the future being bright. That ties into that a lot. Yeah.
What does Bitcoin mean for you? What values represent Bitcoin for you?
Truthfulness, quality over quantity, and meritocracy. Like it's like the playing field has been leveled. So all the old fiat world credentials are sort of. It doesn't matter in Bitcoin who you are. Like what matters is what you do, and it's a whole new field to exist in, and everyone's welcome. So yeah, I think it's a very very good tool for actually having reaching a state of equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in a Bitcoin world there will be no more war anymore, or
I think
is it still possible?
Yeah, that ties into the whole incentive for violence and the profitability of violence. That thing, it's not just a highway robberman that is disincentivized to rob you. It's like every layer of society. So wars will be costlier because governments will at some point have to start to compete for Bitcoiners by being friendlier to Bitcoiners, because Bitcoiners are very mobile and move to the jurisdictions where they're treated the best. That is happening already. So I think we'll see more and more jurisdictions try to lure in the Bitcoiners, and I also believe that the more we use Bitcoin and the less we use fiat, like the more we replace fiat with Bitcoin, what we're doing is we're defunding not only the police but every other government institution. We're defunding everything, like everything fiat.
Can you explain it a bit more? How we defund police and other stuff?
Yeah, like wars are funded. At least they might not be started with fiat money, but they're prolonged by fiat money. So whenever there's a war, there's always a central banker that makes sure that the war machine can afford to go on and on and on and on. It happened in all of the wars, and you can even view like World War I as the war that never ended. It was a war between governments and their citizens, and we're losing, by the way, until Bitcoin happened, and it's still ongoing. They still have, the ability to partially enslave absolutely everyone, and so. If you define what is a slave, it's someone who has to give away 100% of the fruits of their labor. And but what does that make a 50% tax rate then? If you have to give away 50%, are you 50% a slave? Pretty hard to argue against. So what do you call that? Like if someone is taking 50% of your time, your scarce time on this earth, then, well, you're a slave. So And this is only true because like the bad guys won. The bad guys always win in reality, unfortunately. I don't think, like, when I say bad guys, I don't want to call all politicians bad or all people in government bad. That's not what I mean. I just mean there's a structural problem with the whole ordeal, and we think we need these structures more than we actually do. If we had a way to just remove the profitability of violence, which we now do, then much less government and governance is needed, because it's just not profitable for people to be criminal anymore. And like, what then is the point of having laws at all?
So, okay, so you don't need any police for criminals anymore? Do you think it's not necessary anymore?
I mean, this is not going to happen overnight. I think it might take a generation or 16, like, or 150 generations. It's not like, I'm not saying like that this is the only solution, or like this or that is going to happen. I'm just trying to point where the vectors are, just
pointing,
and illuminate where the vectors are pointing at. So you have one big vector that is Bitcoin, that is pointing to less violence and less unnecessary stuff, less hinders in the way, less hindrance in the collaboration between people, because like a trade is just two people voluntarily exchanging stuff with one another. So that's human interactions. They're all trades. Like, even if we don't use money, if I start a conversation with someone, like, we're engaged in trade now. I talk to you, you listen to me.
Trading information.
Yeah, I find it valuable to talk to you. You find it valuable to listen to me, I hope.
I think so.
But it's a trade. You came here by your own free will. I came here by my own free will. That's a trade. So everything's a trade. And Bitcoin makes trade easier. So that's that.
Would you describe yourself as an anarchist?
This is fun, because there are so many words for almost the same thing, like libertarian or voluntarist or anarchist or anarcho-capitalist or whatever. I like the word consensualist.
That's new for me.
I used to say voluntarist, but then I realized, like, if you point a gun to my head, again, that example, and you say, give me all your money, I can voluntarily give it to you, but not with consent. So that's why consensualism is the proper word in my book. Like, I believe that it might be utopian to think that, to imagine a society without government. But it's more of a lens to view the world by. Like, right now we're all still in Germany, and we're bound to German law. If we do something stupid here, the Polizei will come and be unfriendly to us. Definitely. Probably. But right now, in this, like, we are in an anarchistic relationship with one another. This is anarchy. There's no one trying to govern anyone else. And the more of that we can have, just pure voluntary interaction or consensual interaction, the better off we'll be. And the less violent interactions, and that includes criminals and gangs and other mafia organizations, organized crime, including government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You brought your book here.
Yes, too few.
Too
I hope you all are coming to Plochingen next month. I can sit and apologize, put apologies in all the books for why you had to wait for a month.
It's called Bitcoin Everything Divided by 21 Million.
Yes.
Do you want to say one or two sentences about it? Why you should read it, or why someone should read it, and who should read it? No coiners or Bitcoiners or everyone?
I mean, if you liked what you heard me talk about here today, this is probably a book for you, because like many of these ideas are expanded upon in the book and better articulated than just me winging it here on the sofa. So people who like that will like the book, and yeah, I like writing about Bitcoin. This is my third Bitcoin book, and I sort of had to write it after the sentence and the equation took off. So the everything divided by 21 million is a sentence I wrote in an article once, and then I tweeted it, and I don't really remember the exact chain of events, but we had made a little animated video from the article with the equation, everything divided by 21 million, infinity over 21 million equation in it, and then that just took off, and then people started adding it to the Twitter handles, and I now have a folder on my computer with everything divided by 21 million tattoos that people all over the world had. So it's like 20 pictures of different people that had the, and so that was a weird experience for sure.
So you
and I sort of had to write the book when that happened.
do you have a tattoo of this?
No, I don't. I don't have tattoos. I think they're very fiat-y.
Oh, really? How can you describe it a little bit more? Why you think it's fiat?
Because you're injecting paint into your body, and like, why on earth would you do that when there's perfect pen and paper to I just don't understand it.
Okay, it's an argument. Yeah.
That's a preference. I don't dislike people with tattoos by any, like you do you. I just don't have them.
Last question. What do you do to stay patient about the Bitcoin hyper-Bitcoinization?
I mean, I have no...
Or do you think we are already in?
I think we're already in hyper-Bitcoinization. And I think we're probably past the point where Bitcoin is inevitable. Because you can't stop it, you can't kill it, like no person can change it. And it's better than everything that preceded it. So why wouldn't people sooner or later you know, align with it more and more? That's probably how this thing will play out. But I have no disillusions about like I don't know where the price is going day by day or year by year. No one knows. Anyone who claims they do is a liar. Like so I don't know if it'll take 1 year or 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years. And even more, I don't think there's an end point to hyper-Bitcoinization, because what would that be when everyone in the world has Bitcoin? There's still more money in the world. Like when no one uses any other type of money. Well, what do you count? Like, are houses money? Like, there's no end point to hyper-Bitcoinization. And as long as, when all the Bitcoins have been mined, more Bitcoins will be lost than will be found. So the remaining Bitcoins will be more and more valuable just by a diminishing supply. And I think everyone is underestimating the upcoming SAT squeeze, which is, yeah, the sats are going to be harder to find. 90% of Bitcoin are already mined. And add to that this first generation of Bitcoiners, which is us, most of us will die with our Bitcoins in our heads. Like, most of the Bitcoins will be gone in 50 years. There might be a million Bitcoin left, or even 10 years from now. Like, the scarcity aspect is very, very powerful in that sense.
That Bitcoins are good Bitcoins.
Yeah, well, all Bitcoins are good Bitcoins. Yeah.
True that.
Yeah.
Then
except Bitcoin Cash.
That's true.
But that's not Bitcoin.
Yeah, I brought a guitar here because I saw in the internet that you are a guitar player, and maybe you want to play one song for us.
You want to hear a song?
Yeah.
Let's see if I remember this. This is a Bitcoin themed song that I wrote a couple of years back, I think. You say without inflation we couldn't get ahead, but here's a proposition: let prices drop instead. The central bankers fool us and markets get the blame, but I've got fuck you money so I can leave the game. My my faith in all of our systems eroding because of you. I'm tired of all of your lies and of busting my ass off for you. You say to save the climate, you need us ducks in line. But you can't change the weather, and you can't change my mind. For I don't need no ruler, and I don't need to vote. 'Cause I've got fuck you money, and that's the antidote. My faith in all of our systems eroding because of you. I'm tired of all of your lies and of busting my ass off for you.
Great. Thank you, Knut.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the interview. Thank you.
Thank you.